Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us live today. My name is Sandra Jackson, and I'm the Senior Unit Manager for EEO and Workforce Diversity at Infosys Americas. I'm really happy to bring to you today the E-Race Series 1, Eradicating Racism and Bias in Employment. Today actually commemorates the 57th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech that was delivered to the he's an American civil rights activist, and he delivered it in Washington, D.C. And I'm really happy that we're commemorating this today, as well as sharing with you the E-Race series. And so without further delay, let's take a look at the excerpt, and let's look at the speech, as well as the video from our great Infosys.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
What are your hopes for the future?
My hopes for the future are big because I have two small children. And what I hope is that one day they come home and they say, Mom, I got the opportunity because I was the best. I worked the hardest. And not, Mom, I didn't get the opportunity because they only had room for one black person at a time. That is what my hopes are for the future.
What are my hopes for the future? Really, to just continue to excel and to reach leadership, to be able to drive change, resources, and diversity.
For the future, I would like to see more Black voices amplified and more investment in racial equity.
My hopes for the future are one of inclusiveness for cultural diversity within companies, as well as paradigm shifts in the way that we think about employment and the Black employment experience. And hopefully we can get to a point where diversity initiatives are no longer needed because we have diversity as part of our DNA within our companies.
I have really high hopes for the future, as I think most people do, for every generation. But as we become more inclusive, not just in the companies we work for, but all around the country and the world, we will have systems and companies that better represent all people in ways that they can relate to.
My hopes for the future are that the day will come where we are all treated the same, we're all treated as equals, and I think that that day is very near. So just hang in there. We can make that happen. We can make it happen for all of us.
I think it's time for us to establish a new norm. Personally, I want to be able to walk into a boardroom and not feel like I'm there because I'm the token, right? Or that when I'm in a boardroom, it's not uncommon to see many people there that look like me. We shall overcome someday.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Shannon Hart. I'm the communications lead for the Infosys Knowledge Institute. It's the thought leadership and research arm of the company, and I am your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation that covers a subject that can sometimes feel uncomfortable to discuss, but talking about the Black experience, racism, or eradicating racism is a necessary conversation in order to understand, grow, and unite. That is what our esteemed panel is here to help do today, to really talk about it. So I introduce to you our panel. First, Kenneth Berry. Ken is an associate partner with Infosys Limited. He has 20 years of consulting experience, with 13 of those years right here with Infosys. Next is Frank Clark II. Frank is the Assistant General Counsel and head of America's legal team with Infosys. He's been with the company for 8 years. And then we have Nicole Kilby. She is a techno-functional principal consultant with Infosys and also the iBELIEVE chair. She has over 15 years of IT experience, and 5 of those are right here with Infosys. Anurag Sinha is the head of communication service providers and media and entertainment for Infosys. He has been with the company 20 plus years. And last but not least, Anurag Barma has been with is the head of global government and public affairs for Infosys for the last 4 years. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for your time. Okay, just one quick thing for everyone to know, because we have 2 gentlemen with the same first name, Anurag. I will call one Mr. Barma, and the other gentleman, you will be known as Anurag all day long, okay? So we are going to get started with this conversation. And again, thank you all for joining us. Okay, so we're just going to start with a little bit of information. And I'm going to start with Frank. Frank, walk us through what exactly the Employee Research Group is and why is it important to our company?
Sure. Thank you, Shannon, for the question. In my view, ERGs offer employees who share similar characteristics, for example, gender, race, religious affiliation, lifestyle, or interests, a forum to not only network and build relationships, but to enhance their career development and also to increase employee engagement.
Ken, I want you to pick it up from there. Why do you feel like a group like iBELIEVE ERG Council is even necessary? Why do you feel that?
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. I know how hard the struggle has been to gain traction in consulting with no mentorship or the ability to professionally connect with people that look like me. ERGs, not just iBELIEVE, but especially iBELIEVE, provide a sense of kinship and belonging for people that look like me so I can grow and succeed in the organization.
Okay, Nicole, you are the chair of iBELIEVE. So explain what the purpose is, because a reason for needing it and the purpose can be 2 different things.
Right. Thank you, Shannon. So iBELIEVE is created to enhance the employee experience through increasing engagement. It's also to provide a safe space and build just a sense of community for those people sharing the same cultural lens.
Now, Nicole, is iBELIEVE just for Black people, or who's able to join?
iBELIEVE is actually inclusive of all people, including allies. We're trying to focus on a more centered approach for all employees to learn and also advocate for others.
Okay, Frank, this question is for you. What do you think those who are not Black will gain? Nicole is saying everyone, it's inclusive, but what do you hope and think that they will gain?
Sure. My hope is that others would gain a diverse perspective by participating in iBELIEVE, an opportunity to build internal and external relationships with people that they may not ordinarily interact with, and a chance to participate in initiatives and events that will help them learn about diverse cultures and history. Okay. Additionally, and lastly, an ability to effectuate meaningful organizational change, I think is, one of our goals.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all for filling us in on more of the purpose and the reason and the need for iBELIEVE. And I really want to set the stage for today to kind of give you an idea of how this conversation will go. First, we're going to start with a little more information. We'll discuss some terms that really spark conversation in the Black experience. And finally, we'll kind of touch on a few hot button issues that have sparked conversations in many circles and in many organizations around the country and around the world. So we're going to dive right in. And Anurag, this first question is for you. why is diversity inclusion important to not only our company, but also to our clients?
Thank you, Shannon. First and foremost, it's a privilege and honor to be here in this esteemed panel. Now, to your question, why is diversity and inclusivity important for us as a company and also for our clients? Having been in this company for close to 27 years, and majority of that experience being in front of the clients, I can tell you that we as a company firmly believe that we are, in a knowledge industry, and our biggest asset is our people. The thought leadership that we bring to the table really fuels the innovation. It drives the ultimate value for our clients, and eventually drives the success for our customers and for us. Therefore, it is really important for us to pay attention to the talent demographics and to really tap into this talent diversity that is available out there for us. I have also personally experienced and seen over the years that we have always succeeded when we have the most diverse team in front of the client, and we have always found diversity of perspectives, diversity of gender, ethnicity, and so on and so forth, which have all been extremely important in not only bringing together the best team to the table, but also bringing together the best solution. And at the end, uh, I would say that our solutions that we are proposing for our customers, which are eventually serving the end consumers and the enterprises across the globe and in the United States, these solutions need to be reflected based on the diversity from our perspectives and demographics, which is all what we bring to the table when we actually have a diverse and inclusive team to start in the first place.
Okay, so you hear that it is definitely a win-win when you have diversity within your company and in everything that you do. So that's definitely a good thing when you do that. Mr. Varma, so let me talk to you just a little bit. You hear people talk about affirmative action, and oftentimes it's associated with race. Some say it's discriminatory or it favors women and minorities. You hear that often. Why is it that affirmative action is really so important today, even today in the United States? Why is that so important?
Well, I will tell you, first of all, thank you, and it's an honor to be on this panel, and thank you for all of those who created the iBELIEVE ERG group, and it's great to be here. On affirmative action, I'm just going to play off what Anurag Sinha just said. Affirmative action, if you look at the congressional history, it's about maximizing the American talent pool. It's about trying to overcome specific communities' challenges, whether it relates to something historical or whether it has to do with paths to education and overcoming obstacles. I don't need to give my opinion. I can actually just take from federal law, and I'm just going to read here. If you look at the congressional history, affirmative action is intended to end and correct the effects of a specific form of discrimination. For federal contractors and subcontractors, for example, it's for employers to recruit and advance qualified minorities, women, and persons with disabilities, and veterans. It is to include training programs, outreach efforts, and other positive steps. That encapsulates the effort, and frankly, that should always be there so that we can have the best workforce possible in America.
So not just opinions, but what's written and what's law and what's important. Anurag, jump back in here. Do you think the projection for career growth, hearing everything that Mr. Varma just said about affirmative action, do you think the projection for career growth in the IT industry is equitable for minorities? And when I say minorities, I'm thinking Blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yes, I would say that broadly speaking, Blacks and Hispanics have made genuine progress in penetrating our nation's tech sector. Blacks, for example, have increased their presence in several important tech occupations, be it computer programming or operations research. Likewise, Hispanics have also increased their representation in overall computer and math sciences. I think we have seen some of the statistics where probably in early 2000s, the percentages of the workers were 5.5%, and probably a few years back, it had already increased to 6.8%. But having said that, we all know that this is an issue which is extremely important for us to address, and this can be done only when we take more deliberate and concrete actions, for which we need to really bring the ecosystem together, which includes the educational institutions, that includes the government perspectives, which Anurag Verma so nicely talked about, and also the companies and the company leadership need to really come together to promote the economic environment, which is so crucial for us to succeed, Shannon.
Okay, so that leads to my next question. It's kind of a two-part question. And Mr. Barham, I'm going to toss this question to you. How do organizations build the pipeline in order to recruit African Americans and people of color for executive level positions? That's question one. Question two, once they are there, how can organization leaders ensure that they are successful?
Sure, thank you. So I will say, you say build a pipeline. We have a pipeline. Yeah, we have a pipeline, right? We've always had a pipeline. We have 240,000 employees at Infosys. I mean, every company has a pipeline. It's about broadening the pipeline. It's about going to places where traditionally talent is not sought but exists, right? And there are experts in the fields of recruiting, and I think it's incumbent on employers to go find creative ways to broaden the pipeline and find talent that they don't always look to. So that's the question. That's the answer for me. Number one, I'm not a recruiting expert, but I know that talent exists in lots of places that aren't traditionally sought after. I think that's number one. On number two, it really is about mentoring. It really is about creating support structures. By the way, I believe the iBELIEVE resource group is one such structure. But honestly, it's about ensuring that leadership programs within institutions are also looking at broad pools of talent. I think those are couple avenues. Again, it's about broadening the pipeline and not just building it.
Now, Ken, I also want you to pipe in on this, because you're an associate partner, so you're truly in a leadership position with the company. But I also know it takes work to get there. What do you suggest as far as building a pipeline to recruit more people to sit in positions where you are in companies across the country? And what do you do to make sure they're successful? Mr. Barmer said one thing, you fill us in a little bit more.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think first, companies must first acknowledge who they really are if they're going to make change in a sustainable way. So with that being said, there's an assessment that needs to be had to determine, for African Americans, if you want to build a pipeline for African Americans, are you creating an environment that's inclusive, that's equitable for African Americans to be successful when they come in? On top of that, there needs to be a very clear career development path, and making sure that you're providing the opportunity to get the required skills, and even more importantly, the necessary experiences to grow with the company over time. Lastly, you need to be able to provide equal access to those opportunities within the company, and ensure that you're promoting along the way, allowing people to be judged on their merits, and making sure that there's equity and those are being supervised. So.
Okay, so you get someone there, you figure out how to keep them there, but maybe they're the only African American person there, hence the word tokenism. So Ken, address go a little further with us and talk about tokenism, and then give us your thoughts on what businesses can do in relation to your previous answer to kind of wipe that word out of their business plan.
Yeah. So what's funny is, when I think of tokenism, I think of this in a few funny ways. First, I think about the South Park, right? I think about, they had the one character, they call him Token, right? So, and then obviously there's jokes made about me over my past based on my name being Ken, and I've had to actively repel that, right? But for those that don't know, tokenism is about making a symbolic effort only to include members of a minority group, and not actually allowing for a real appreciation of the diverse talents that that individual can bring and allow them to contribute to the success of the company. In my view, company leaders need to understand that tokenism actually hurts diversity, equity, and inclusion. In my experiences and how I've seen individuals that have been put in those types of roles, you have to be fake to get ahead. And company leaders need to ensure that they are looking at promoting individuals based on their talents, based on merits, based on their ability to make contributions, and truly value that.
Okay, so I want to bring in another term, institutional racism, but do you think bringing someone in, giving them a seat at the table is really going to change institutional racism that's really kept Black people out of executive leadership positions? Do you think having that seat is going to change things?
So again, my view is, it's not just a seat, right? For one, it's a respected seat that has a voice and influence. In my experiences and how I've seen companies over the years, whether I was in prior consulting firms or whether I was in the industry, one of the things I acknowledged and learned early on is there's a real power center within companies. Just because you have a title, just because you have a seat, doesn't mean you have a voice and influence. So first, company leaders need to acknowledge what their power center is. Are there those select group of individuals that really make it happen? And how are you ensuring that you're having the right representation within that power center? Again, I've seen companies that you can have a chief on your title, but guess what? When you actually looked under the covers, there were tiers of chiefs in that company, and you may have been a chief in title, but not influence in the organization. So to me, company leaders need to acknowledge that in order for it to move forward.
Okay, Frank, jump in there. What can you add to that? Having a seat at the table, will it change institutional racism?
Sure. So to me, it's a significant step in allowing a different viewpoint to be expressed in the room where it happens, quote unquote, to quote my favorite musical, Hamilton. In order to change the status quo, we've got to be able to articulate the challenges that African Americans have continued to face in corporate America. And the best way to do that is to have regular access to CEOs, board members, and other executives. And to Ken's point, I mean, you have to recognize where the power base is. I think it's also essential, though, when we perform and excel when afforded that seat at the table. I look at it as an audition. If we nail it and are successful in the role, then it establishes a standard and opens the door for more to follow.
So I remember Mr. Barma kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but Ken, you addressed this, and why is representation so important in fostering an inclusive environment?
So I think number one, I think representation, when you can actually tie it to success in the company, it makes sense for everybody. Right. So the way I look at it, representation is critical for current and future success. If you go take a look at companies that are leaders in diversity and inclusion, they historically outperform the S&P 500. And then also, as you think about future success, if you're going to maintain the success you currently have and ensure that you're attracting the next generation of talent, you have to have representation. So when we think about the college graduates of 2025, of 2030, what are we doing now to make Infosys an attractive place for them to come work, where they see individuals that look like them, having success, growing their careers, and wanting to follow in those footsteps? If we don't have representation, or on the path to ensuring that we have representation in the right ways, we have we're not going to be in a position to attract the next generation of talent.
Okay, speaking of the next generation, Ken, thank you. Not only next generation, but from a woman's point of view. Nicole, give us your thought when it comes to representation. Is it important when it comes to fostering the right environment?
Representation is very important to me. It's the first visual communication that a company actually honors diversity and inclusion. And it also kind of gives you a visual of what are the viable next steps in my career.
Okay, you said the next steps in your career. When we start a career, most people really want to make a good impression. And sometimes that may mean staying quiet on certain issues. And so, Nicole, I'll start with you on this one. 15 years in IT. Congratulations. I'm excited to hear more about your journey. But during your journey, at any time during your career, did you ever have fears or insecurities about speaking up or taking action against racism? And if so, give us an example or explain to us a little bit.
So my grandmother was a very integral part in my life, and she also had actually actively participated in the civil rights movement. So it was more so you always speak up when something's wrong, because that's the only way that things get fixed. So in regards to, I think I have fear of the after effect of mostly when I speak up, maybe either being ostracized or being labeled with microaggressions.
Ken, what about you? You've been in consulting for a very long time. Have you ever had those moments where, you were concerned about something you may have said to stop someone with that perhaps just has things that seem racist to you, or concerns about the after effect, like Nicole said?
Yeah, thanks for this. I would say, me personally, no. In terms of not being concerned with the after effects, I've prided myself on ensuring that the talent I bring are well worth the value received, and also being able to express my views as it relates to being put in those uncomfortable situations. I mean, I've been in personal conversations and discussions with even clients in my former life, where racist things were said to me to my face, and it was said in a way that was intended to be a joke. And at that point in time, you make a choice. Do you make a big deal out of it, or do you just file away an understanding of who this person is, an understanding of how to better engage with them in the future if you find that you have to, and you keep it moving? I haven't had perspectives of where these racist types of incidents have influenced my ability to succeed. If it was influencing my ability to succeed, then I would probably address it.
Okay. Great responses. Great, especially as we think about
So seems like we have probably some connectivity issue, and we may have lost Shannon.
Shannon's back.
Great.
Shannon
Mute.
can't hear her.
Shannon, could you try again?
No.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yes. Okay, great. Then I'm going to go ahead and ask this question really quick. Should Black people be responsible for explaining to their white counterparts why Black Lives Matter? Nicole, I'm going to send this question to you. And then, Mr. Varma, I want you to talk about it as well.
I personally think that we should not be responsible for educating people about Black Lives Matter. There is a lot of information out there, and it's kind of like right in our face. I think that coming back to follow-up questions for understanding and context is where it is, but I don't feel like I should be responsible.
Mr. Varma?
So the answer for me is no. I mean, it's a collective. If it's a collective in a university, in a workplace, in a country. If you had a mayor, let's take Dallas for example. That I'm the mayor of Dallas, but I've decided that a certain suburb, right, should fend for itself, right? Everyone in the city would disagree with that. I mean, we're a collective, and I think it's the same thing here. Is that we work together, and if a certain constituency has a certain set of circumstances and concerns, we all need to be listening.
Frank, what do you think?
It's a very interesting question, Shannon. And I think it's really important to share our experience and history with others, particularly when asked. So because there's so many people who truly have no knowledge or context for the challenges that African Americans have faced on a regular basis. However, to Nicole and Anurag's point, I think in today's world of social media, smartphones, people now have a front row seat and are educating themselves. And it's become very apparent that we are treated very differently in society. People just can't sit back and say, oh, come on, that didn't happen, because now we're all seeing it live on video. So, to recap, I think it's important to share our history and experiences with people who are interested and uninformed, because it helps them understand the struggles and challenges that we face.
Okay, Ken, what's your thought? Do you think we as Black people need to be the ones to always explain Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, so I'll take it back to conversations I had in the early 90s back in high school, where I had to justify why I was classifying myself as pro-Black. My classmates had a problem with that, and they thought when I said that I'm pro-Black, that meant anti-white. And I said, look, that's not the case at all, but I want the best for me and my people, and I want to be able to enjoy the same fruits that you all have. So when I think about Black Lives Matter, I mean, we're facing, you see it every day on the news, you see it every day in the newspapers, social media. I mean, we're facing an all-out war here on a daily basis. And I've personally experienced that over my now 44 years. I mean, I'm the kid that would go for a run preparing to play football in the fall and get pulled over by the cops and asked for an ID. But yet I'm the one running back in the state of Missouri, and everybody knows me, I'm on the newspaper, but it doesn't matter. So and then none of my white counterparts in high school or in college face those similar type of issues, right? So it's a real thing. And I personally experience it on a regular basis.
Wow. Great information. Let's dive into a few more terms. We talked a little bit about Black Lives Matter. How do you distinguish between equity and equality? Mr. Varma, I'm going to let you take that one on, because I know you've probably done the research on that a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's very topical. It's very topical, and I'm glad it's very topical. The generally equality has been equality of opportunity based upon how society is structured. Equality of opportunity when it comes to education, healthcare, the workforce. Equity is more about the bigger picture. It's about the allocation of resources. It's this idea that let's take a look at the traditional rules of the game, and why don't we shift them to address communities that hadn't always gotten the right allocation of resources. And so when you think about racial equality and racial equity, that's what you're differentiating in. Equality of opportunity based upon the current allocation of resources, and equity is let's take a relook at can we change how resources are allocated.
Okay. I like that thought process. Another term that I really want to address, I have been saying Black throughout this panel. And I usually, if someone says, are you Black, white, when I'm on the phone, if it's necessary, I'll say that I am Black. My son is now telling me I'm not Black at all, that I am brown. He is 5 years old, so that makes total sense. But we also hear the term a lot, African American, and a lot of people are afraid to use Black, they'll use African American. So the big question, and this is for everyone on the panel, what's the correct term, or what term do you feel most comfortable using? Nicole, start with you. Black, African American, and does it matter to you one way or the other?
For me, I think I will identify as Black over African American. I think it encompasses my heritage better. The United States has kind of reduced everybody to these 5 races that you have to check off, and it really doesn't encompass people holistically. So I prefer Black. African American, I've been told by African colleagues before that they were truly African American because they immigrated from Africa.
Okay, Mr. Varma, you are next. You're on my screen. Black, African American, which do you use?
I will use whatever someone who is Black or African American would like me to use. I mean, it's I mean that's the honest answer. I mean, look, I respect my colleagues and my friends and so on. And honestly, if someone says to me, I'm Mr. Varma and I'm not Anurag, okay. Just joking. But no, I mean, it's just, for me, it's that simple. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about respect, right? So focus on respect and you'll get to where you need to get to.
Okay, Frank, you are next on my screen. So what do you say, and what do perhaps most of your friends or colleagues say, Black or African American?
Yeah, so Shannon, I think personally, I'm okay with the use of either word, and I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to your question. I think, I probably use Black most of the time, but I believe it does come down to which term a person's most comfortable using, and sometimes that often depends on the audience that they're in front of. So, if they're in front of a corporate function or in the boardroom, they may say African American. If they're more comfortable saying that in a professional setting, and when they're hanging out with their friends and family on the weekend, they may say Black. So I think that's kind of where it boils down to.
Okay, Ken, how about you? What say you?
So I'm going to go slightly different. And to me, I prefer Black, but I would much rather have it be acknowledged as a Black American, because I've gone to Canada, I've gone to Europe, I've gone to South America. Just saying Black is too generic. Saying Black American acknowledges the lineage, history, the struggle that's unique and very different than any other place that I've been to throughout all my travels.
Okay, Anurag, we haven't heard from you in a little while, so walk us through. What do you prefer to use? What feels comfortable to you?
I would, in a generic sense, I would probably pick Black, but I have found that in any conversation, it is better to make it specific. I would use the name. I would, if I'm talking about Frank, I will say Frank. Everybody understands who Frank is in a company. It's all about respect. It's all about love. It's all about empathy, and it's about making sure that all parties understand that they are being cared for. So that's how I put it.
Okay. I will tell you, in the newsroom for the years that I was in television news, Black or African American, I always said Black. And I will tell you, my white counterparts felt uncomfortable after a while, and they would always say African American. But I will tell you, there were times in news that I was called the N word, not by my colleagues, thank goodness, but just out in the public, because you are getting an opportunity to really be in someone's home, in their faces, in their business, as they like to say. So for me, it Black or African American or Shannon. Shannon always works as well. But I always find that interesting, depending on the group and the crowd that I'm in, how people feel or if they're even seem comfortable. Let's talk about another term that a lot of people may not understand. Nicole and I've had conversations about this. I'm going to go to Nicole with this one. Code switching. Nicole, explain that to us a little bit, and why do people feel they have to code switch, especially in a work setting?
Thank you, Shannon. So code switching, just to really put it in simple terms, it is survival. For African Americans, code switching is really a performative expression. It helps us thrive in mainstream and corporate America. It's also an adaptation mechanism. It is what we use to continue to just be within the workplace and for our success. We navigate through the language. So sometimes, for example, you would say, instead of saying "what's up," or you'll say "how are you doing?" So it's really just trying to change your vernacular, your words.
Ken, talk to me a little bit about this. You've heard the term.
Yeah, no, I mean, I used to be a master at it. And again, I think survival is a key element to it. It's being represent yourself in a way to be truly accepted for who you are, and the core of it is coming out of a perspective of fear, where you being who you naturally are, you communicating how you naturally would like to, won't be accepted by a certain group. Now, I still do it. I can code switch even between different groups of Black friends, whether I'm dealing with my Black friends in a professional setting or my Black friends in a athletic setting. I've been able to code switch with dealing with my Indian counterparts and understanding and the best way to communicate with them versus my white counterparts. It's a natural adaptation that I've personally been working on honing since I was in elementary school, because I was fortunate enough to go to private schools, college prep schools outside of my community, where I was either the only one or one of very few. So as a result, in order for me to be accepted for who I was, I needed to learn how to adapt in order for them to really understand me, get to know me, appreciate me. And then I was able to then naturally express myself. Now, in a professional sense, I've actually, I try my best to completely stop code switching. And I'm at a point now where I look to everybody to accept me for who I am, how I communicate, how I carry myself, my stance when I walk, all of that. needs to be fully embraced in order for me to give the best that I can when I'm serving my clients. The last thing my clients should want me to do is worry about other things other than, am I giving them the quality of service that they're expecting from me?
Okay. That is a hard one sometimes in the professional world. And I applaud you, Kian, for saying, I'm no longer going to do that. So we get the authentic you. So thank you for that. I hear this statement a lot. I am colorblind. I don't see race. Nicole, how does that make you feel when someone says that in response to conversations about race and bias?
So my first initial thoughts are that is silly. What do you do at a traffic light? Like, you see color. Ultimately, it translates that you don't see me. You're choosing to ignore that part of me because it makes you feel uncomfortable. It also says that you don't hear me and you don't like to hear me, and you're basically silencing my voice. And it also translates to you don't understand me and you're not trying to even learn what my experiences are like. So that's how I feel about when people say I'm colorblind.
Okay. There you go. Okay. What's the difference between racism and unconscious bias? Anurag, I'm going to start with you on this particular question.
Okay. I think racism, in my view, would be something which probably is more conscious versus, and that is something which needs to be addressed. Probably much more deep-rooted strategies would be a influence of culture, the communities that we are all part of. But I think unconscious bias is something that you don't know, and that is something I would think would be an effective way to address. Would be to focus on ongoing trainings and tools, which our company is deeply investing in.
Okay, Mr. Varma, your turn.
Sure. So my experience with all of this comes from, I spent many years as a lawyer suing the U.S. government for discriminating against Black farmers, and so I traveled about 25 states in the rural South, working with thousands of Black farmers, and we saw three things. And this is about federal farm programs and access of Black farmers to these programs. Well, I'll call it, I won't call it unconscious, I'll call it conscious. Explicit bias, that's when somebody says, there's no way you can be a competent farmer because you're Black, right? That's straight up conscious bias. That's explicit bias. Implicit or unconscious bias is, without even realizing it, you just assume because that farmer is Black that they can't be competent, right? I mean, that's kind of a structure in your brain that's what you think of the farmer because of their race. Racism, and we sued on this basis and won, which is that the government did not give Black farmers the same access to the programs that it gave white farmers, right? We ended up winning several billion dollars for Black farmers across the country in that case, but it was based upon, right? So we have the institutions behind you, right? That's when it goes from conscious bias or unconscious bias into actually racism. And so that's been my experience in working through that lawsuit, and that's how I couch it in my head.
Okay. Wow. I don't think I realized your experience. So that's really interesting. And I'm glad you brought that example up to really give us an idea of the difference between the two. When people exhibit biases, do you automatically label them racist? Nicole, I'm going to send that question to you. Why or why not?
I don't automatically look at them as racist. And it actually really depends on what is the language and also what is the action behind it. So if someone says, for instance, oh, you speak very proper to be Black, I might think that that's more so of an implicit bias, because they might be ill-informed that we as Black people speak English too. So versus if someone says something more stereotypical and they're a repeated offender, I'm probably gonna label them racist.
Most of the focus has been on whites being racist, but can Blacks or persons of color be racist as well?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think if you're in a position of power and influence, and you're using that racial identification as a point to exert that influence, the short answer is yes. I think in the United States of America, specifically speaking about Blacks, we don't have, in large part, we don't have that level of power to exert our means in a way that would lean towards racism. But in its purest sense, yes. I mean, any racial group that's in a position of power and a position of influence can be racist towards other groups.
Okay, just piggybacking off of that, Frank, with the ongoing racism affecting Black people, such as police brutality, has it been difficult to manage your interest and engagement at work? And talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Shannon. And I wouldn't say that it's been difficult to manage my interest or engagement. However, I'm very concerned about the current state of the United States. I think the country is really divided right now, and in my view, people are feeling emboldened to be and act overtly racist. And I find it frankly infuriating that, after what happened to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery this year, that Black lives are still being lost so arbitrarily. I'm very concerned with the impact that all these events have had or will have on my children. And I will say that, my wife and I have decided to take the direct approach and honestly talk to them about what's happening, because coverage is so prevalent. You got the TV, you got internet, you got social media, that if we don't have the conversation, I'm afraid they'll hear about it through someone else, and won't be as sensitized. I want to make sure that I'm having that direct conversation so they can ask questions and I can respond accordingly.
Great, thank you. And so the next question actually goes to Ken. At what age did you experience racism? Have you experienced racism? And at what age did you experience racism?
Yeah, so have I? Yes, far too many times. But the very first experience that I had of it was actually the summer between second and third grade. I was going from a private Catholic elementary school to a local public school. And I was excited. It was middle of summer. I was excited. My next door neighbor actually was already at the school. We were playing in the school playground. And I was curious just to see what the school looked like. So we walk around to the side, look into a side window, just to see what a classroom looked like. Next thing I know, cop car pulls up. And again, I'm 8 or 9 years old at this point. Cop car pulls up, basically says that somebody has seen us breaking into the school and calls the cops on an 8 and a 9-year-old kid, and cops arrest me. I get taken down to the police precinct. My mom has to come bail me out. I'm 8 years old at this point. So I've been dealing with these types of issues throughout my life, where the way it is, and I've learned how to navigate. I still walk with, every time I see a cop car drive by, I'm always looking over my shoulder to see if he's turning around. My friends and I have routine jokes about, it's not driving while black. We actually put my acronym on it, right? So it's driving while KB, parking while KB, walking while KB, running while KB, where there have been blatant incidents where I'm going for a run, friend just went for a run, I get pulled over by the cops, friend doesn't get pulled over by the cops. I go to park a car in a parking lot, have a parking pass. They question me, asking me if my parking pass is valid. Meanwhile, the guy in the car right behind me has the exact same pass because I actually bought the passes for both of us, but yet he doesn't get questioned. So, so that's kind of a view of my experiences.
Thank you for that, Ken. Growing up myself in Detroit in the inner city, I was experienced racism myself, being a girl, young girl, being white, predominantly living in a Black neighborhood, Hispanic neighborhood. And I overcame it by really building those relationships with my Black friends, getting to understand them, getting to understand what was going on with them. Back to you, Frank. Have you experienced racism and how have you overcome it? Let's talk about how have you overcome it as an individual, and have you experienced it any time in corporate America?
Sure. Thanks, Sandra. And it's interesting that you say you grew up in Detroit because that's where I'm from.
Wow.
So we got that connection. So similar to Ken, I think, I was very young the first time I experienced racism as well. I was 5 years old, so I was a little bit younger than Ken. And I was playing at a friend's house in a suburb of Detroit, and one of his neighbors came over and called me the N-word. And at that time, I had no idea what the N-word was. I had never heard it. I got home. Mom picked me up, and my friend's mother, was apologizing profusely and saying, "Oh, we're so sorry that, Frank had to endure that." And my mom was like, "What are you talking about? What happened?" Frank didn't say anything to me. And when she told my mother what had happened, my mother was like, "Well, Frank has never heard that word before. So, of course he wouldn't have reacted because, we don't say that word. We don't use that word. Not to say that he's insulated, but, he's 5 years old." So, I think it's a thing that, happens to people at different ages. It happens in various scenarios. And, it's going to be a part of, I think, people's testimony. Everybody's got, a first time where, they were discriminated against.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why I do the work that I do, because I feel so strongly against racism. I feel so strongly about racial reconciliation. And I think that's where we have to go as a country. So we have about 30 seconds left, and I would like all of you just to share what are your hopes for the future when it comes to the Black experience, also when it comes to promoting diversity and inclusion. Nicole, let's start with you.
My hopes for the future are really around more investment in racial equity, including reducing and eliminating the pay gap, also honoring everyone's authentic self. And so those are my hopes for the future.
Mr. Varma?
Sure, thank you. I really do think that if we really want to make change and want to make a better society, that we put more diverse leaders in charge of allocation of resources. That's where the decisions are made. And when we have more diverse leaders who are in charge of making decisions on where resources go, then we'll have the type of America that reflects all of America.
Great, thank you. Frank?
Thanks, Sandra. My hope is that we've started an important dialogue that will be nurtured throughout the remainder of this year and beyond. I think, I'm really excited about the iBELIEVE ERG. I think Nicole and her co-chair Deontay are going to be great leaders of the ERG this year, and I'm excited to be the executive sponsor along with Ken.
Thank you. Anurag?
Sandra, my hope for the future is that we stay committed to building a world where it's progress for all, and specifically the strategies that we as Infosys are taking to build the digital talent at scale with sincere efforts to promote diversity and inclusivity, make a difference. The efforts that our foundation is doing, which is the Infosys Foundation USA, to really reach out to all communities at large, as well as the Reskill Restart initiative that we have initiated. I think all these initiatives help us create the talent, nurture the talent, and really create the environment to create a fulfilling experience for this talent in our company and beyond.
Thank you, Anurag. And last but not least, over to you, Ken.
Yeah, so when I think about the future, I think this is an excellent launching pad. I would like to see, I believe, go global, where we have regional chapters everywhere where Infosys has employees. And it's an environment where anybody feels that they can join a group that's going to be inclusive, that's going to focus on mentorship, kinship, so that we get the collective best from everybody. Secondarily, I hope this serves as a catalyst to change the culture where I can see young African Americans, young Black Americans come in at the analyst level or at any level in between and see a glide path to success. And through this group and through the opportunities that we have to influence our corporate leadership, I hope that we can really begin to put those building blocks in place to where success isn't the exception. Success is the norm. And I'm not just one of the few African-American partners in consulting. There's a whole bunch of us, right? And they're all over the practices, and we're each applauding each other's success because we know how hard that struggle has been.
Well, thank you, panelists. This has been a compelling and thought-provoking session. I hope you all enjoyed it who listened live to us. And stay tuned for our next Series 2 that will come out in October with E-Race. And thanks, everyone. And we will end the session with everyone saying thank you and goodbye. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.